Good morning, it's Father Chris from St Mary's, Willesden. You join me on this lovely fourth Sunday of Easter, although not quite as sunny as it has been in previous weeks when I've been doing this. In fact, it looks a little bit like it might rain, so let's hope it holds out while I share a few thoughts with you this morning about Good Shepherd Sunday. That's what we've been celebrating today as we hear the story about Jesus as the gate, and we read Psalm 23, that great hymn about the Lord as our shepherd. I wonder if any of you can remember the film that came out quite a while ago now in 1995, so that's I think that's 25 years ago, isn't it? Yes, something like that. Oh dear, that's quite a long time because I remember it. The 1995 film Babe. This was an adaptation of a Dick King Smith novel entitled The Sheep Pig, which you can obviously read if you would like. It's an adaptation of that novel. For those of you who don't recall, it's about a farmer who wins a piglet at the county fair. This piglet is called Babe. He avoids becoming Christmas dinner by the farmer deciding that he will show Babe at next year's county fair. In the meantime, Babe makes friends with a border collie called Fly and discovers that he, like Fly, is quite good at herding sheep. So he embarks on a career in shepherding with surprising results. In this film, Babe is portrayed as a good shepherd because he genuinely cares about the sheep. He takes the time to learn their language, and by this means he's able to communicate with them. And so the sheep come to trust him because they recognise his voice. As I said earlier, today is Good Shepherd Sunday, and you can see why when you look at the text appointed for today. Psalm 23, with its poetic language so frequently employed as I have this week employed it at funerals, to remind us of the comfort and the security that we have with the Lord, how he provides for us and reminds us and protects us even when danger strikes, how God provides so lavishly for us. He keeps us safe. And we have the final sentence too, don't we, of that passage from the first letter of Peter. You had gone astray like sheep, Peter writes, but now you have come back to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. And then today we have that gospel in which Jesus utters one of his 7 I am sayings. I am being the translation of the divine name first revealed to Moses in the burning bush. Jesus tells us that he is the gate to the sheepfold, providing safety and security to the flock, because he is the only way to get in or out of the protection afforded by the sheepfold itself. Despite living in an often gritty urban environment, albeit you wouldn't know from being in the beautiful garden that we're in with the birds singing, we're still affected powerfully by the pastoral imagery of the Bible. It speaks to us on a deep level which goes back before the days of industrialisation and the megacities that some of us live in today. In the film, Babe is able to communicate with the sheep because he takes the time to get to know them and their language. In the same way, Jesus communicates to us in languages and in ways that are unique to us, out of the profound love that he has for us. And we see the way that he does this in our gospel reading this morning. The vivid imagery employed by John and the poetic language make it my favourite gospel of the 4, actually. The way that Jesus communicates through the words we hear this morning, the parables, are very rich and complex. We have an image of the sheep in the sheepfold, protected by a fence. We know who the shepherd is because he is the one who enters through the gate. The sheep recognise his voice, but not those of the others. So they follow the shepherd. The others who try to break into the sheepfold by jumping over the fence or by cutting in somehow are not to be trusted, because they're there for evil reasons. They want to kill and destroy. It's Jesus and only Jesus who gives life to the sheep, life in abundance. Those who come and go through the gate can be confident of being led beside still waters to graze on rich pasture. Note, by the way, that Palestinian shepherds did not use dogs or even pigs to control the sheep, but rather went ahead of them and called them with their own voices. So we're presented today not only with the idea of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, because of our reading of the Psalms through a Christological lens, but also of him as the gate to the sheepfold. As well as trusting him to provide for us and protect us, it's made clear to us that he is the only way through which we gain security and safety. And this brings me to the antagonist in the passage, the thief or the brigand. Who's this? Well, Jesus has in mind the false prophets who competed with him at the time, who pretended that they were in fact God's messengers and sought to have people follow them, but who in fact did little other than just get people to die for them. In our own time, these people would be those who tried to capture our affection and our loyalty by other charismatic means. That is to say, various sects, the religious sects that proliferate around the world, or the culture of death that pervades a lot of the secular society that we live in. Now, when I say sect, I don't mean the various Pentecostal groups or the other free churches that we have a dialogue with as the Church of England through the Churches Together movement. There are ways to recognise what I mean. These movements don't profess the Nicene Creed, for example. They don't affirm the Trinity, and they don't affirm necessarily the divinity of Jesus Christ. Some mix up doctrines in a kind of a pick and mix kind of a way, doctrines that are incompatible with Christianity, so reincarnation, for example. And they spend a lot of their time rather loudly attacking the church, and their aggression is often a hallmark of their identity. They want to break into the sheepfold, and they want to scatter the sheep and steal them. And that's true of the cult of secularism, whose creed is increasingly at odds with the Christian faith. First, it argues that Christianity should be a private matter, something between the individual and God, if he exists at all, as they say. And so public expressions of faith are first of all frowned upon, then maybe ridiculed, and eventually they add restrictions. They ban us from worshipping. They even persecute Christians. In this time of pandemic, I've become very worried by the willingness of some within our church to go beyond the restrictions, which are entirely sensible and necessary. I'm not suggesting that closure of churches for public worship shouldn't have happened. Of course it should have. But the restrictions that some in our church have placed upon us mean that nobody, not even the vicar, can go and pray in their church building. This seems to it does in fact go well beyond the restrictions that were placed in the law, which say that clergy as key workers ministers of religion may go to their place of worship in order to pray or to offer a live stream for people to join in with. Now, banning that, going beyond even that, which seems to me to be perfectly safe, seems to deny the importance of sacred space as a public good. The place our communities have set aside for God for centuries have been treated as optional extras. Now, the former Bishop of Worcester, Bishop Peter Selby, has written an article in the tablet, which I urge you to go and find if you can. It's a very, very good article. And in it, he imagines the world emerging from this pandemic. And he imagines that the bishops will surely seem to have accepted the idea that Christianity is a matter for the domestic realm, that our cathedrals and parish churches are just optional when they're useful and available, no longer the eloquent signs of the consecration of our public life and our public spaces. The conviction that the ministry of word and sacrament in the places of beauty set apart is an essential work undertaken by key workers. This will have become a wistful memory. He argues, and I support this wholeheartedly, as you can imagine, that such work is absolutely essential, particularly, even more so after this is all over. Those who have been called and set apart for the work of a priest, patterning their lives after Christ, who is the Good Shepherd, are designated key workers for reasons that go far beyond their apparent usefulness in terms of burying the dead. Their ministry of prayer on behalf of the parish and the world, particularly the offering of the Eucharistic sacrifice, is a vital public benefit. Those who seek to privatise Christianity may believe themselves to have good intentions, but I fear that they may have been lured astray by those whose motives are those of the thieves and brigands of the Gospel passage. The Christian life is ultimately not something which we can keep to ourselves like any other lifestyle choice. It's frankly absurd that our archbishops, who are able to, without going outside their homes, enter these beautiful chapels that they have, should see fit to stream worship from the kitchen as if to signal that they are in solidarity with ordinary people. We all know that they have palaces to live in. That's part of the job of being a bishop or an archbishop. Priests and bishops are called in a particular way to pattern themselves and their lives after that of Christ the Good Shepherd. And it isn't clericalism to say that because of this their lives must be different. Not better, but different. Just as my hair is different from my fingers. Not better or worse, different. It's the priestly pastoral duty to go to the altar of God, in the place hallowed for that purpose, to reassure God's flock that their needs are being brought into the presence of God, and to remind the flock entrusted to them of God's love and care for them by feeding them as best they can. Now, I hope and pray that we'll soon be able to return to church, all of us, and that at the very least I shall be able, I hope, to return to pray at the altar on your behalf very soon indeed. In this time of restriction in which so many people are suffering far worse than we are, we need to hear Jesus' teaching that it's only through him that one can be saved. This is not an optional extra. It's not something that we might do in the same way that we might choose to join any other club or society in our spare time. The Christian faith is an essential aspect of our common life. It's an intrinsic part of our nation's identity. Our spiritual health is necessary for life as much as our physical and our mental health are. Tending it cannot be put on hold or reduced to a private, personal, domestic exercise. To do so is to listen, intentionally or not, to those who would break in and steal from the flock. So on this Good Shepherd Sunday, let's listen to the voice of the Lord, who guides us beside those still waters, whose rod and whose staff comfort us, and through whom we have access to eternal life. Let us allow ourselves to be led by him, and him alone, not straying from the path he wills for us to walk in. And let us never be ashamed to confess that he is our way, our truth, and our life, and the only way through which anyone else will be saved. And so to him be glory, majesty, and might, now and forever. Amen. God bless you. Have a very happy Sunday and a good week.